Tipp today, in association with Slattery's of Pecan, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. Slattery'sGarage.ie.
Good morning. Welcome along to Tipp Today, 1800 938 007. That's our free phone number. It won't cost you if you'd like to make a call to us. Leanne is producing. Coming up on the show this morning, the Association of Catholic Priests say they respectfully disagree with recent comments from Bishop Alan McGuckian. We'll hear from Fr Tony Flannery in just a few moments' time. Liam Brown, Councillor Liam Brown, will talk to us about antisocial behaviour in Cashel, home energy upgrade event in Clonmel this evening in the Talbot Hotel. It's an interesting one because there's been changes in the eligibility around the grants there, so it's worth a listen. MEP Michael McNamara is with us after 10 o'clock. A man will explain how he used AI to call pubs right across Ireland on St. Patrick's Day. John G. O'Dwyer continues with the story of Ireland, and our listeners will give opinions on various different topics. All of that and more on the way. You can text and WhatsApp 083 311 3311. You can email tiptoday@tippfm.com. Let's have a look at the front pages. The Irish Times, the lead story on the Times today. The US is planning to deploy around 3,000 additional soldiers from its elite 82nd Airborne Division to the Middle East, even as the Trump administration seeks talks with Iran over ending the war. Also on the Times today, and this is a story that kicked off yesterday, two government departments are to review findings of an Irish Times investigation that highlighted links between Irish-made alumina and dozens of Russian weapons manufacturers. Interesting one on the front of the Times today as well. Hard to believe. An unregistered dentist was offering patients treatments, including x-rays, in the sitting room of a Dublin apartment, the Irish Dental Council has said. The Irish Examiner, and the lead story on the Examiner is from Niamh Griffin, who tells us that thousands of people are being tricked into buying potentially dangerous weight loss drugs from criminals in patches or drops, even though the drugs do not legally exist in those forms anywhere in the world. Also on the Examiner, the public need to examine their energy consumption, use public transport more, make their homes more energy efficient, and cut their speeds on the roads to offset rising fuel costs, the Taoiseach has said. The Irish Independent, and it's dominated by an action photograph of Ireland star Troy Parrott indeed, as he gets in some last-minute practice in Dublin as the squad prepare to fly out to Chechnya in the Crunch World Cup qualifier semi-final playoff tomorrow night. The lead story on the Indo, thousands of nurses and midwives who care for patients in their homes want higher mileage rates due to the fuel crisis. And finally, a look at the Irish Daily Mail. And the lead story on the Mail, Michael Flatley has hired a private detective to investigate spiralling loans worth millions of euro on the books of a company that he established to run his Lord of the Dance tour, a court has heard. That's a look at what's making headlines. Would you like to comment on any of that? And once again, text and WhatsApp 083 311 3311. Now, the Association of Catholic Priests released a statement this week after it was reported by the Irish Catholic newspaper that Bishop Alan McGuckian thinks the door to female diaconate is shut, and that his fellow Jesuit, the late Pope Francis, should have said so. The Association of Catholic Priests say they respectfully disagree, and Fr Tony Flannery joins me now. Good morning to you, Fr Tony.
Good morning, Fran.
And thank you so much for coming on with us today. It's interesting that you say that while you disagree with the bishop, you welcome his honesty, and you go on to say too many bishops take refuge in inscrutable silence around controversial matters. So you welcome the debate, I guess, Tony.
We absolutely welcome the debate because that has been central to the whole synodality movement that's been going on in Ireland and indeed all around the world. It was initiated by Francis. Open discussion on all topics is central to it, and giving a voice to everybody. The equality of all the people baptized in the church. That's the central notion of synodality. And from the beginning of that process 5 years ago or so, the question of women's place in the church has been right at the top of the agenda. The fact that women cannot exercise ministries within the church, they cannot be deacons, they cannot be priests, all because they are women and not men. And that has been a major topic. And we really felt that progress was being made and that there was openness to change. And then along comes Alan McGuckian and says, no, the whole thing is closed. The reason we referred to the other bishops is we think what Alan McGuckian said is really very damaging because, as you probably know, Fran and listeners will know, women are turning away from the church in massive numbers, particularly, of course, younger women who can't take the notion of inequality and being second-class citizens, but also indeed, older women and women of my own age are more and more disillusioned by this whole thing. And what we wanted, like Alan McGuckian's statement came out later last week, no bishop in Ireland has spoken out to in any way contradict what Alan McGuckian has said. They've all been totally silent. And the difficulty with that then is that Alan McGuckian's position becomes the official Catholic bishop's position. Mm. And that will just take the ground from under the whole synodality movement. It will destroy it.
And have you reason to believe, Father Tony, that bishops may disagree profoundly with Bishop McGuckian, but they're almost afraid to put their head above the parapet? Is that your belief?
Oh, yes, I would certainly believe that. In the earlier stages of the synodality movement, we had a big meeting in Athlone with representatives of small dioceses and associations and that. I was at that meeting. All the bishops were present at that meeting. And the topics of the day were the most open that I have ever experienced in the Catholic Church. And the whole women's issue was freely and openly discussed at that meeting. And all the bishops were there and nobody in any way objected to the open discussion on it. So why now are they sitting back in silence when one of their top members says this issue is closed, we cannot talk about it anymore? It's a serious setback to the whole process.
Well, could you answer your own question there, Father Tony? Why will they not speak up? Who are they afraid of?
I don't know. I'm afraid I'm not a bishop, and I was never anywhere near that. I would love to hear your own bishop here, Kieran, give his opinion on it, because I would strongly suspect that Kieran's opinion is quite different to Alan McGuckian's. And I think it would make an enormous difference to women, to a lot of women, to hear somebody like Kieran say, no, that's not the case. All topics as regards women in the church are still open for discussion and will continue to be.
Well, we'll ask Archbishop Kieran to talk to us about that, because, as you say, it would be very good to hear his view on it. In the article, it got very theological, and I had to do a bit of research on this, I'm afraid, because I understand that his main argument is from a Catholic dispensation point of view, and he speaks about the bridegroom and the bride, and that's referring to the relationship between Christ and the Church. I understand, if I'm correct in that. Is it, Father Tony?
Something like that. It's a very old theological notion. And if anybody reads our statement, you'll see we take them on that one. Because that comes out of an era when relationships between men and women were hierarchical. The husband was in charge.
Yes.
The wife was subservient to the husband. And it was out of that notion that the idea of men and women in the church, the men were the ones who were suited to the hierarchical positions, to authority, to making decisions. The women were there to serve. Now, we are saying that idea of men and women is totally out of date. Nowadays, the whole equality in terms of relationships and the marriage and all of that, it's a relationship of equality, not of hierarchical positions. So it's quite amazed to hear him coming out with that very ancient theological notion and trying to justify.
Do you know what's particularly sad, I think, is that it's playing into something that's emerging in recent years, and we were talking about it on the programme over the last while, this notion of manosphere. These influencers who are out there and they're influencing young men to believe that, you know, the masculine, the alpha male is all important. He has to dominate the woman, and the woman is very much subservient to him in some sort of way. The sad point is that that's almost playing into that in some way, isn't it?
It is exactly, Fran. You've hit on something very important there. And if anybody of the listeners are in tune with what's happening in America, parts of the American church have gone big into this, and young men are appealing to it because of the notion that men are superior to women. And you see, that's the real problem with this church teaching. It's promoting that superior male position. And in the American Catholic Church, there are sections of the American Catholic Church that are great supporters of Trump for the same reason, the dominant male. And it's a shame to see the Irish Catholic Church going down that line. And it's a blind alley. It's going to get us nowhere. It'll just end up. I was talking to a few women friends of mine because we in the association were wondering about having a public meeting of women that sort of would put a strong voice out about the position of women. But all the women that I spoke to said women have they've lost interest. They wouldn't be interested in going to a meeting like that anymore. They're completely tuned out by what's happening in the church at the moment. And that's very sad.
Well, it's very sad, and it's such a huge, huge loss.
Yes, it is, yeah. And for somebody like me, I've worked on the church reform for the last 20 or 30 years, and really the sense that we were making progress and that there was real openness in the church, and then for this to happen is sad. So maybe the bishops that I would love to hear from were first of all Eamon Martin, the Archbishop of Armagh, because he's the head man of the Catholic Church, and secondly Dermot Farrell. But as you say, now that we're talking into prayer, why not Kieran come out and say something about it? It'd be good.
Well, we have a good relationship with the Archbishop, and we certainly put
I'm
it
sure
to
you
him.
have, and he's a great man.
On. Yes, for sure. Could I finally drag you into a conversation we've been having over the last couple of days? And I spoke to Father Iggy O'Donovan about this yesterday, and Father Brendan Kilcoyne as well, just to get sort of opposing opinions, I suppose. We were talking.
You certainly got them there.
that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, we were talking about the notion of reimagining the likes of St. Bridget and indeed St. Patrick in light of the President's speech, I suppose, that became rather controversial. But that notion that Dublin City Council, for example, they opted to celebrate a pagan goddess on the feast of St. Bridget as opposed to a Christian or a Catholic Bridget. I just wonder, how do you feel about that, Father Tony?
I wasn't too tuned into it now, to be honest with you, Fran. It doesn't surprise me because, like, at the moment, anything to do with church, it tends to, we find, for instance, in the Association of Catholic Priests for nearly 20 years in existence now, when we began, it was very easy to get into the news, to get publicity. But nowadays, church and anything to do with religion are not really stories anymore. So I can see fully why people and media in particular would go for the notion of the pagan goddess rather than the actual St. Bridget. Doesn't concern me too much one way or the other, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting because, I mean, when we discuss church issues on this programme, and particularly yesterday, we were inundated with opinion and diverse opinion from
Right,
people
okay.
listening. So it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, yes, it is. But it's part of the trend. I suppose with the whole era of the sexual abuse and all that sort of thing, church and church matters really are the reputation of the church has suffered massively in this country.
Yeah, and to get back to our original conversation, is that part of the reason why bishops and archbishops won't put their head above the parapet? Because no matter what conversation you and I would have, or I might have with a bishop, inevitably somebody will text in, that's grand, but what about the abuse?
That's right. Yeah, you're perfectly correct there. But that's a pity.
Yeah.
I suppose the other thing, we would always say this among ourselves, maybe I shouldn't say it publicly, but for a long time, ever through the era of Pope John Paul and Pope Benedict, people who were chosen to be bishops tended to be men who were safe, who were traditional, and who played the party line, so that outspoken people hardly ever became bishops. Now there's some changes happening in that, but it's largely the same. I don't expect any bishop will comment publicly on Alan McGuckian, but I think it is an awful pity. I know some of them personally, and I know that their views are very different to his, but they won't say it.
Well, what a pity, particularly at a time when people need certainty and they need people to speak up and speak out, don't they?
They do.
Yeah.
They do, and they need people to give leadership. And ultimately, Fran, it comes down to this: if the church doesn't deal with the issue of the equality of women, it's dead. It's going no place. I'd be absolutely convinced of that. I think it's the central question facing the Catholic Church. And so that's why I feel very, very strongly about it. Having a church that does not allow equality for women in the modern era is just so utterly out of touch. It's going no place.
Well, Father Tony, I always look forward to our conversations. Thank you so much for making time for us this morning. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you.
Good morning to you. That's Father Tony Flannery there of the Association of Irish Catholic Priests. How do you feel about that? 083 311 3311. A couple of emails into us over the last while. Fran, I reached out to you a few weeks ago about how I've been feeling. Right now, the rising cost of living is really getting to me, and I'm okay with sharing this openly with your listeners. I'm a 28-year-old single man, earning $32,000 a year and working 9 hours a day. On paper, that sounds decent, right? But let's break it down. After taxes, I'm lucky to take home around €2,500 each month. From that, I have 400 in bills. Fuel costs eat into another €600. After paying rent, I'm left with about 500. When I subtract food and other essentials, I barely have €60 left by the time the next paycheck arrives. I'm living paycheck to paycheck with no room to save. I rent, but I know I'll never be able to get a mortgage because I don't have any savings. I spent 4 years in college and over €20,000 on education, and this is my reality now. I've looked for other jobs, but the salaries are the same or higher, yet the rent in those areas is even more expensive. I can't even consider moving abroad for better opportunities because in countries with higher wages and a better lifestyle, English isn't the first language, and the UK and the US are currently very unstable. I feel lost. This isn't where I thought my life would be. Another listener writing to us, I'm listening to Fran having a conversation with a listener about young people getting on the property ladder, and I'm fuming. My daughter is 30 this year, has no choice but to live at home with us. She is working full-time since she was 17, is not married or in a relationship, and just cannot secure a mortgage to buy a house. She can pay back €400,000 of a mortgage, no problem. But because she is only one person with one income, the mortgage lender will only give her 3 times her salary, and she has a really good job. She would need to take out a monster loan on top of her mortgage. That needs to be paid back in 10 years. It's an absolute disgrace because her friends are all in new social housing in lovely estates. So my question is, what are the government doing to help people like my daughters? And that's just a couple of correspondence to us over the last few days. 1800 938 007. What about the price of diesel and petrol? I must say, on my run up here to Nina today, I didn't see any change in what's being charged out there. So can you let us know, what is your experience of that? 083 311 3311.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, hook on. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, hook on. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Pecan, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
Good man, Andrew. Let's go back to Councillor Liam Brown and see if that has improved. Good morning to you again, Liam.
Morning. Well, I'm sorry about that.
No problem. I think it's... But let's see where we get to. You were telling us about a particular property anyway, Liam, yeah?
Yeah, I am fine. Look, there's a property that's located in the centre of Cashel town, and, it takes in people from different local authorities. Has been the problem in the last couple of years. There's people who are not eminent from homeless services in Tipperary County Council, but from homeless services in other counties. And unfortunately, we seem to have found out that some of those are coming from the Irish prison system. They're coming from the court system, jail. And these are people who are in trouble already and who get to Cashel, and I suppose cause more trouble when they get to Cashel for a variety of reasons. Culminated last weekend in a fairly serious incident in one of the shops in town. It's been reported by ourselves and by other local media.
Yeah.
About a Gardaí who was injured. The reality is there was more than one Gardaí injured in that particular incident. And there was 2 Gardaí assaulted at the time. Plus there was staff inside in the shop assaulted that wasn't reported. One of the Gardaí, I think, is still up. This is been an isolated incident. Just
and again, your line is breaking up just a little bit. It might be where you are just at this very moment. But you were contact was made from a member of the Gardaí to you privately. Is that it, Liam?
It was, yeah. At this occasion, look, it's happened a couple in the past before. As a council, we have contact with local Gardaí about different things that are going on. But this was a particular contact was made, which was just begging for somebody to kind of speak out and say, look, we've got to make their own superiors aware of this situation, which we have done in fairness, but, we're not getting the extra Gardaí. We know we have extra Gardaí. Like, this is a problem I've had since I became a councillor, Fran, in that every single department in the council and even in government, I'm beginning to find they all work by themselves. They never realise that by doing a change in one area, it affects another area. So, if you solve a homeless problem in Laois, it creates a security problem in Tipperary. But nobody cares in Laois about the fact that there's going to be extra Gardaí needed in Tipperary if you're sending people who obviously have, and not all of them, I don't want to rag down on homeless people, but if you have people coming out of the business office into homeless services in Tipperary, and the local Gardaí have no idea that they're coming, they've no idea what they've been involved in, it's going to cause a problem. So the Gardaí, a Garda reached out to me, but other Gardaí have reached out to me in the past as well about similar issues and trying to get on the agenda. We need more police in Cashel. We need more Gardaí in Cashel, and we need them on the beat, because in this particular instance, it was a female Garda. She went into the incident by herself and ended up getting, I think, badly assaulted, to be quite honest. We can't have that situation. We should never have that situation with any Garda in Cashel.
And
to be honest.
People might find it very hard to understand that if there are people from other jurisdictions with criminal records being sent to the town for accommodation, that the Gardaí would not be informed in some way about this. That people would be aghast at that, I guess, Liam.
It absolutely stands to reason that they should be fine. I mean, it's a no-brainer for, as I often say, for myself and yourself, we've been talking about this, you'd want to be scratching your head. I mean, some of these people, they're on bail for offences. Now, of course, they're innocent until proven guilty, but there's at least a potential that they may be involved in criminal behaviour or serious violent behaviour. And like in this particular instance, the person did get involved in violence, and it's not the first time, Frank. You know, if you talk to other residents on the street in John Street, and I've spoken to many of them, they will tell you that there has been a history of this in the past. It's not an isolated incident. So it just became a point where I had to say enough is enough. It's got to stop. We've got to take it seriously. And more than one agency has got to look at it, because, again, people will say, where are the Gardaí? Why aren't the Gardaí doing anything? An awful lot of Gardaí on the beat are doing their level best, and in many cases going over and above what they should be doing. But they're also trying to fight this with one hand tied behind their back when they don't know what's coming, they don't know who they're dealing with. So, I mean, we haven't been listening to residents in John Street. We haven't been listening to businesses, Fran. Quite a number of businesses that contacted me to say fair play for making this public. And I'm glad to make it public, because I think we need to do this more and more. We need to make problems more public so that people will see that they need to be sorted out.
Well, particularly at a time, and I know the Cash is no different to other places, but at a time where you would like to attract businesses into the main street there, because there's a lot of vacant premises there, is this the kind of thing that would put people off from making that decision, do you think?
I'd imagine it would, Fran, and I mean, I'm going to tell you something now, and you're probably going to not believe this, but I spoke with a higher level Gardaí inside in the county council meeting last November. And at one point, one of them intimated that maybe I should not make it as public that there are issues like this in town, because obviously when it goes into the media, people may think there's a big problem in Cashel. Cashel is a fantastic town. It has a small problem, but that small problem is confined to a small number of people. But those people are going to make it a big problem if we don't deal with them. Now, we're not dealing with them at the moment because we're pretending that the problem is not there. So yes, it would put off businesses, and it shouldn't put off businesses. And like I said, I want Cashel to grow. I want people to come into Cashel. I want people to feel safe in Cashel. But when I get getting reports like this of people who are afraid to use a particular street, which is a very historic street, which is right, you know what I'm talking about, it's dead centre of the town. It's an artery into the main street. We cannot have people thinking that they cannot walk up and down that street safely.
And that is the general feeling, is it?
That is the general feeling, and it has to stop.
Yeah.
And we have businesses, coming to me that they're constantly having, their stock has been taken, their staff are being intimidated. It has to stop once and for all. And the first way to stop it is, as you said, the first way to fix any problem, Fran, is admit there is a problem. And we've got to put that problem out.
That's why I'd be very concerned that the authorities believe that you shouldn't speak about something like this. Yeah.
Well, I give them a flea in the rear when they said to me, Fran, I told them that, more than that to stop me talking, because I don't believe it. There's no point hiding problems. We've done it long enough in this country, and look what happened. I could name 10, 15 different scandals, and you could name them yourselves. And why they became from a small problem into a scandal was people said, we shouldn't talk about it, or don't talk about that in public. Let's talk about things, let's acknowledge things. If we're not doing things right, let's fix them. But if we pretend the problem isn't there, we're never going to fix it.
All right. So what would you like to see happen pretty much immediately, Liam?
But pretty much immediately, I think that particular location has issues, I believe, which would stop it being open in the first place. The second is, I think that we should not be taking people out of a place like Portage prison or on bail unless local Gardaí know who's coming and know what issues that they have and know what they're on bail for. If people are supposed to sign on, you may have people having to sign on while they're on bail. Local Gardaí should be informed of that, so that they have some idea of what sort of people are in the area. And thirdly, I don't think the particular property should be used for what it's been used for, which is homeless accommodation. We've got to get a handle on that. We've got to make homeless accommodation more secure. It shouldn't really be in areas like that where people don't know who are coming in and out of the areas, because you're not going to build up neighbourhoods if you have transient populations. And realistically, the way to fix the whole problem, again, is to provide more housing and get off our backsides and do that. do that a bit better because we're not doing it. Otherwise, we're just going to have the problem in perpetuity.
All right, Liam, thanks for coming on with us this morning. Thank you. Good morning to you. That's Councillor Liam Brown speaking to us from Cashel this morning. 1800 938 007. The text and WhatsApp is 083 311 3311.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Pecan, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
Welcome back to Tip Today, 1800 938 007. Now, the SEAI, that is the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland, Southwest Sustainable Energy Communities are hosting a home energy upgrade event in Clonmel this evening at the Talbot Hotel, and it kicks off at about 5 o'clock. And Gerard Fitzgibbon, Tipperary SEAI, SEC Community Energy Mentor, joins me now. Good morning to you, Gerard.
Good morning, Fran.
And good to talk to you this morning. Will you tell us about tonight's event?
Yeah, well, we're running a group of these around the country, and in Tipperary, it's an opportunity for homeowners, householders to get information and support about if they're thinking about an upgrade or tire kicking or want to know what grants are available or, different measures that they could do. And they'll also have an opportunity then to meet with some local suppliers. So we'll have some exhibitor stands there as well in the Talbot Hotel this evening. And then as well as that, we'll have some short talks and panel discussions on a variety of topics, including, financing that's available, as well as information about the vacant property grant. Shane Grogan from Tipperary County Council will be there. And then with the final piece of the evening, we'll have a community panel on community groups that are doing sort of community-based upgrades. So there's a range of things happening over the evening between 5 p.m. and 8 p.m.
I've been trying to get my head around some of this, Gerard, and it seems to me there's been significant changes to the SEAI grant eligibility and funding under the retrofit programme. So it would be worth people's while finding out more about this, wouldn't it?
Yeah, particularly in the area around windows and doors. So previously, it was only the case that you could upgrade or get a grant for as windows and doors if you were doing like a whole house retrofit by the likes of a one-stop shop. But now it's also possible for individuals to avail of the window and doors grant as part of an energy upgrade. And I suppose it's important to stress that because it is some support funding from the taxpayer through the SEAI. And it is to improve the energy performance of the homes. And of course, the windows and doors are a part of that, as well as wall insulation and attic insulation.
Yes, but there certainly is wider eligibility. I mean, more people can qualify now at this point.
Yeah, definitely. And there's three broad strands of support. There's the individual grants for maybe individual measures you want to do. Maybe it's your attic insulation, you want to top up that, or your wall insulation. Maybe it's heating controls or a stove or a heat pump. And then if you were thinking more broadly of a whole house renovation, there's a different strand for that, whereby you contact a group called a one-stop shop, and they'll take care of all of the project management around that, including commissioning contractors and that for a deeper renovation. And then if you're on any of the qualifying payments, there's the fully funded energy upgrades. And it's important if you're on fuel allowance or the other qualifying payments that you would go and register for that scheme. Now, there is a waiting list there, but it's come down a lot. It was 2 years. Now it's much shorter than that. But if you have your name in, then it's a possibility of getting your home upgraded under that scheme.
What about first-time buyers? Is there new support there?
Well, I suppose it's just that if you are a first-time buyer, you usually have an energy rating on the house, so that will give you a sense of, what are the areas for improvement. So your energy rating might be a D or an E, and that will say, okay, your wall insulation needs to be upgraded, or maybe it's the windows and doors, or maybe it's the heating system. So there's definitely an opportunity to once you're buying to go directly to those grants that are available to support those areas. Now, if you have if you're purchasing a home that's qualifies for the vacant property grant, it is possible to link in the SAI funding with the local authority funding there, once you clearly separate which part is funding which part of your building project.
Right. And is there advice tonight on that, for example, as well as everything else?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So as well as us being there from the SAI giving information on the energy-related grants, the Tipperary County Council and Shane Grogan will be there talking about the vacant property grant and how to apply for that. And he'll also be talking about the Town Centre First programme, and there's a repair and lease scheme there that's available that people may not know about, and it'll be an opportunity to find out more information about that. So definitely, I think even if it's down the line and you're thinking about this, or even if you have a project ongoing, it would be very interesting. And we're also going to have a number of these one-stop shops present at the event, and they'll have information, in terms of their offering, in terms of a whole house solution. Lee Therm will be there, who are a locally based company. Heart Home Retrofit, Energy, Electric Ireland Super Homes. There's a range of those that are going to be there. We'll have a number of solar providers. We'll have a number of windows and door suppliers. Fogarty's there. Fogarty's Joinery, Tipperary Windows and Home Improvements. So There's a range of suppliers that are going to be present, as well as ourselves from the SAI and the local authority. So it should be a good chance for people to kind of work through projects that they might have in mind.
For sure. And one of our listeners is wondering about heat pumps and grants available around heat pumps, for example.
Yeah. So there's a range of grants available then for that, depending on which whether you're doing it as an individual measure, whether you're doing it as part of a one-stop shop, or whether you're doing it as part of the fully funded. If it's an individual measure, there's obviously a 7,500 grant for that. So that's significant in itself. If it's done as part of a one-stop shop, also there's significant funding within that, and of course, as if it's fully funded, obviously that's covered by that scheme.
All right, so all of this information available tonight. Somebody else wondering about solar panels, and does Garrod have any information on that? What about that in terms of funding?
Yeah, well, I suppose the mantra from SAI, we're trying to get, obviously encourage people to insulate, have, better insulated homes, warmer homes, more efficient homes. But, the first place to start is the fabric. So we say fabric first. That's your wall insulation, your attic insulation. And then after that, it certainly is a good step to look at the possibility of solar. Obviously, you have to look at the number of, you have to scope out that is how have you got the proper roof space? Is it facing in the proper direction? Can it support the panels, or is there maybe some area on land or garden beside where you live that could accommodate some ground mounted panels? But certainly, it can be a very good part of a whole house solution. But make sure you get the fabric upgraded first, and that you're not generating electricity to then waste it through poorly insulated walls and attics. So that's probably the way we go to advise, and we will have some advice on site there for that this evening as well.
Very good. Just a final query from a listener, if you would, and it's about a second wall insulation upgrade, and wondering about funding for that. That's in the new eligibility, I think, is it?
What was the question there again, Fran?
In terms of a second wall insulation upgrade, in other words, if you've already had a wall insulation grant and if you made use of that, can you go and have a second one, I suppose, is the question.
Yeah, there has been some tweaks on that, all right. Yeah, for example, if it's been the cavity wall that was done a number of years ago and it needs to be topped up, or you want to do a dry lining inside that. So certainly, that is a measure that can be looked at. I think it's interesting. There's been some articles in the paper recently, I suppose exploring or challenging some of the current practice now on insulation and upgrades. Yes. And, I think that type of debate is welcome, where you go, there's some evidence that maybe if people go from a G to a B, are they saving that much on energy? And I suppose there are some factors, behavioural factors to play there as well, as in people underheat poorly insulated homes and then properly or overheat well insulated homes. Yes, so it kind of skews the data there a little bit.
Yeah, I was reading some of those articles, and they're kind of they make for very interesting reading.
They absolutely do. Yeah. And look, the data is welcome because we want all these support schemes to be kind of fact-based.
Yes.
Like, for example, now, there was something, Trinity College did analysis where they were showing there's perhaps a green divide developing, whereas maybe more of the well-to-do householders are availing of the scheme. So we need support there that can support everybody. And certainly that's there through the fully funded upgrades. This evening we'll also have information on the loan scheme. So there's new low-cost finance now available. It has only just come in over the last year and a half. And that's we'll have Clonmel Credit Union there, Permanent TSB, as well as the people running the home energy upgrade loan scheme. So that's a positive development.
So the Talbot Hotel, I presume you don't have to register, just make yourself available tonight. Is that it, Garrod?
Yeah, come along. I mean, we've had some registrations online through Eventbrite. If you want to Google there, you'd be welcome to do that. But you're certainly very welcome to just show up and register on the way in.
All right. Good to talk to you today and have a good evening. Thanks, Garrod. Good morning to you. That's Garrod Fitzgibbon speaking to us there. And it's tonight, the Talbot Hotel, 5 to 8 p.m. there. And all the information you need about home energy upgrades and all of that. Leanne is with me. Good morning to you, Leanne.
Good morning, Fran. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. You've been inundated, particularly on the whole church, I suppose, conversations we've been having over the last couple of days.
It's always one that stirs so much commentary. And it's very 50-50, which always surprises me. We made this point the last time.
Yeah.
But around particularly the St. Patrick and the Patrick, that has ruffled so many feathers. So many people are angry and think it's so disrespectful.
And this is making reference to the President's speech.
While others say, he was a person.
Yeah.
We don't care. It actually makes him more personable. We feel like we can connect more. One of the strangest arguments that came up on our social media yesterday and got very, very heated is obviously some people are saying, look, we're trying too much to diversify Irish traditions and these holidays, and we need to remember the roots of them. Someone else came along and said, well, how is it an Irish tradition if Irish people were traditionally pagan and St. Patrick himself was an immigrant?
Yes.
So there was a huge argument on social media about this idea, with others just saying, well, I think she may have not thought about it fully. She knew. She's very well media trained. She has PR. Did she not know that this was going to cause
she's a very smart lady, so I can't help but think whatever she did was premeditated and set out in some way,
Yeah, some of the younger people seem to think she was trying to make a stand. She was trying to make Ireland feel more
inclusive in some way,
But then for others, it was, is this the time and place? Because St. Patrick's Day is one of those things that's celebrated all around the world anyway. And people from all countries and all generations love it, be it a drinking holiday or a tradition. But abroad, it's not a patron saint day.
Now, some people were giving out yesterday and wondering why are we still talking about St. Patrick's Day a week on. But that conversation has evolved, hasn't it? All over social media the last week,
It's not, because the point is,
it's
not going away. It's not just St. Patrick's Day. We've seen St. Bridget's Day be called Bridget's Day, and pagan parades take place.
The pagan goddess,
That idea in some schools now, it's not Merry Christmas, it's Happy Holidays. Because obviously Hanukkah falls around that time as well. With Easter, the Easter Bunny is kind of the main event of that for many families. So that idea of them being days of traditional religious celebration, it's been moved away from.
Yeah, it's interesting. The other thing is the cost of living, of course. You getting much on that?
So much. And so many young people feeling so deflated. Like that letter we heard this morning, that people are working hard, but they're not making it anywhere. And when they think they're finally going to be able to save a little bit, prices go up again. And there's so many young people I've heard from who have no savings. They are living paycheck to paycheck, and the stress of that.
And these are people with relatively good jobs, Leanne.
These are people who've gone to college for 4 years, got their bachelor's degree, did everything you're meant to do, spent over 20,000 on bills, because again, this is where the Susie grant comes in, because a lot of these people, they wouldn't have had the money to pay for college.
Yes.
But they still didn't meet the means test for the Susie grant. So they took out loans to try and pay themselves through college, which can be anywhere from 12,000 to 20,000. And now they're trying to pay back those loans, but they're not making any money off the fact they have a degree.
It's interesting. Now, some people wondering, why are we in Nina so much?
Oh, dear.
Now, there's one person I know that's to do you want to say why we're in Nina?
Well, I had a bit of a freak accident and I broke my foot. I did a bit of a belly flop and slide down a footpath.
Yeah, you did it in great style. In fairness.
I did. I was like a penguin. My arms were behind me and I did a complete belly flop and slide the whole way to the door.
Right. So you're living a lot closer to Nina.
I'm living a lot closer to Nina.
So it suits you for the moment.
Because I'm off the road, unfortunately, for the time being, and I'm all booted up.
And you're depending on lifts and all sorts.
I know,
of stuff,
it's so weird. Now, it came at a great time with the cost of fuel. I have to say, like my bank account is happy at the fact I'm not having to pay for diesel.
Right.
But I feel like I am 15 again, having to be like, Mammy, could I get a lift, please?
All right, so just in case people think that we've abandoned Clonmel, I mean, we love being in Nina. We're quite often in Nina anyway, but it's just if we're here a lot lately, the excuse is Leanne's little accident.
Yeah, I'm one leg down.
All right, so if you want to sympathise with Leanne, it's 1800 938 007. Thanks, Leanne. News and information's coming up, and we are indeed live from Nina.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
Thanks, Pat, and welcome back to the second hour of Tip Today. 083 311 3311 for your text or your WhatsApp. Now, MEP for the South constituency, Michael McNamara, has secured support for a prohibition on AI-generated, non-consensual intimate imagery, so-called nudifier applications as part of a political deal agreed. Now, just to remind you, a nudifier, it's software, I suppose, or an AI tool designed to remove or alter clothing in images of people, creating a simulated nude version. MEP Michael McNamara joins me now. Good morning to you, Michael.
Good morning.
And thanks very much indeed for your time today. My understanding is this was not part of the Commission's original proposal, Michael.
No, basically this is an omnibus procedure, which means that it's making minor changes to an existing law which was introduced in 2024. It's really delaying the implementation of parts of it because the standards that were required are not in place primarily, and there are other very technical changes. So this is a substantive change. It's clarifying that that AI systems can't be allowed to generate these images because of the harm they cause in society. We'll be aware as Irish people of that election candidates can be subject to this, particularly female election candidates. It's increasingly seems to be the price that young women pay for putting their names forward as candidates in elections. Obviously, Gráinne Seoige's case was highlighted, and she highlighted the humiliation and embarrassment that she felt as a result of that and the pressure it put on her. It's far from unique to Ireland, unfortunately, but it's also something that puts a lot of pressure on teenagers, more maybe girls and boys, but both, where false images of them are being created and circulated to embarrass and humiliate them, and sometimes to blackmail them into doing things that they don't want to do. So it's undoubtedly not something that's beneficial to society.
It probably emerged from the Grok AI tool that was so controversial at the time. Is that really where this came from?
Well, I mean, there are several AI applications that carry this out and have done for some time. I suppose Grok was the biggest one. I mean, Grok is a mainstream AI. Other mainstream AIs have the technological capability to do this, but have built-in guardrails to prevent them from doing it. And I suppose Grok was one of the first mainstream ones that's readily available to everybody to do this. And obviously then that led to a huge proliferation of these images and a resultant outcry among people who were either directly affected, or parents of children or parents of teenagers who were affected by it, or indeed just people who recognise that this is not a way that this is not a beneficial use of technology, which has many beneficial uses.
Of course it has. I heard you addressing the Seanad on this topic. Did I get from that not everybody in the union is supportive of this? Is the EPP, for example, not supportive of this?
They are now. I mean, we had a very difficult negotiation with them. They are very reluctant to introduce any measure that will stop the business sector, the technology sector, much of which they make the point, and it is a fair point, that much of the technology companies and the lead in technology has migrated to the United States, and Europe is being left behind, and they're reluctant to introduce any measures which could encourage that. On the other hand, I mean, I would say that the reason that most companies, indeed I've carried out, at various meetings that one might have with trade representatives, asking them, was the reason that they left Europe, a lot of European startups leave to go to the United States, is not regulation, but in fact, if you want to get investment of European savers' money, the way the capital markets are structured at the moment, you have to go to the United States to get that, and that's a huge hindrance to the development of businesses across Europe, and something that needs to be addressed. Regulation in and of itself, obviously, we should never have regulation for its own sake, but regulation exists, and sensible regulation exists only insofar as is necessary to protect people and protect society, and this is a measure that I think is necessary to protect people and protect society. Some countries have introduced their own measures that make these images, the creation of these images, of the use of AI to create these images, unlawful. Others haven't. That in itself is problematic in the European Union, where we want to have a single market and single enforcement procedures across the European Union, because countries like Ireland, Slovakia, Estonia, for example, are small countries and small markets in and of themselves, and are part of a bigger market, and companies as well as individuals want to know exactly what the law is so that they can regulate their behaviour, and I think it is beneficial that it be consistent across member states.
Again, in your address to the Seanad, you were warning the senators ahead of us taking over the presidency of the Council of the EU. You were warning that there would be a lot of pressure, a lot of lobbying on members.
Yeah, I mean, these tech companies that are involved in this Meta, which is Facebook, is Meta sort of emerged out of Facebook, AI, OpenAI. These companies are attracting billions and billions in investment. I mean, they're opening their own nuclear power plants in America. So these are these are companies that are bigger than many states, and I mean, they spend that money as they see fit, but that includes lobbying in their own interest, as lots of groups do. They're perfectly entitled to do that, but I think they are very active in lobbying in Brussels, and I think they will be very active in lobbying the Irish presidency, because Ireland is a country that has grown very dependent upon tax receipts from these tech companies, and I think maybe many would acknowledge that Ireland has become overly dependent on tax receipts from a small number of tech companies, and they often put pressure on Ireland and will put pressure on its elected representatives to try to water down proposals in the European Union to that they would see as detrimental to their interests. proposals that make them more accountable, proposals that seek to, in some way, advantage European companies, small startup European companies over these huge North American-based multinationals, many of whom have their headquarters in Ireland, their European headquarters in Ireland, and of course pay corporation tax in Ireland, which in many respects keeps our economy afloat, and one would worry if that is at risk in the event of that they were to move their headquarters elsewhere, or that they were to make a different decision in America, either at the behest of the American administration or otherwise.
Well, there's been fear about that so many times over the years, and still it never comes to pass, of course. Yeah.
Not yet, but I suppose there was a huge fear of the concentration of expressed by many economists, this concentration on the taxes from construction in Ireland, and how the economy was so dependent on those.
And look at what happened there.
Taxes.
Yes,
and of course that bubble burst. Since then, instead of having 2 or 3 areas that were very that were very concentrated on, it's now really one. It's corporation taxes, which is risky to say the least.
Could I get an opinion?
Of course,
I do beg your pardon. Yes, Michael. Can you what?
No, I'm saying, of course, it is welcome that they have their headquarters in Ireland. It is welcome. Their taxes are welcome for the Irish economy, but to be so reliant on it is a risk, and one I think that we need to combat, and I think people have been warning of that for some time in Ireland.
Well, I suppose the way to combat it has to be more investment in indigenous companies and more supportive indigenous companies in this country. I mean, would you go along with that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I would, and more I mean, there's a feeling among indigenous companies that that economic policy in Ireland is not being determined with them in mind. Yeah. It's being determined with the large multinationals in mind. I mean, when I was a TD, you'd have small company owners who might be employing 5, 10, even 20 people, which are hugely important to the Irish economy. All of them Irish, based in Ireland, going absolutely nowhere, staying in Ireland, no threat to move anywhere. But we can't really get access to senior decision makers in the civil service, where I think increasingly, primarily the decision makers in Ireland are cabinet ministers who often follow the line that they're given by those senior decision makers. Yes, these multinationals has an open door to senior civil servants and senior politicians, and often, of course, put these senior civil servants in their boards after they retire. So there are very important questions around how Ireland is run. I think that I hope we answer before we're in a crisis, not while we're in one. But I mean, every country, it's human nature to often only address problems when the chips are down to...
Indeed, when the horse is bolted, I suppose. And one of the big issues for companies has to be, of course, the cost of energy. And I mean, we're dealing with that this morning. The government intervention yesterday. We're not quite seeing it in all of the forecourts at the moment, for example. People at home certainly suffering where the cost of heating oil and the like is concerned. What do you think about that at the point? And the intervention of the government, because most people believe it was too small and too slow.
Look, we are so dependent on imported energy that the government's room to maneuver is limited. I mean, they need to reduce taxes as much as possible. They're taking that measure. But we also need to look at, there's a ban on exploration in Ireland. We know that there are gas reserves off the west coast of Ireland, and yet there's a ban on even looking at it. That simply doesn't make sense to me. Yeah, I recognise that we can't keep burning hydrocarbons forever, but we have acknowledged, even under the Green government, we've introduced new gas generators in Ireland to generate electricity. But that gas is going to be imported on tankers. Much of it was coming from the Gulf area. It's not coming from the Gulf now, so it's coming from Russia, either because of the Russian war. So now it's coming from North America at a huge carbon footprint. So the carbon footprint of using gas that exists in the ground off the west coast of Ireland is far less. I think that's one measure that needs to be looked at. In the long term, I suppose the hope is to move to renewable energy. But I don't think, the more wind farms that go up in Ireland, more and more go up. They often go up in places where, one of the few places where there's biodiversity left. I see ESB in Quilcha cashing in, and near where I live myself, there's a wind farm going in an area that's inhabited by hen harriers. Farmers can't cut rushes because it's to protect the hen harrier, but ESB in Quilcha can put in wind turbines where they're nesting, and there's no problem. That obviously leads to resentment, but there's little benefit for the local community. But you can't cover the whole country with wind farms, and even if you did, it's not going to be enough. I mean, notwithstanding the increase in them, the percentage of electricity that's generated from them is not increasing because the overall electricity needs increase. So we do need to look at how we're going to fuel our economy. And again, difficult decisions have to be made that are being postponed by the decision makers.
While we keep hosting more and more data centres, I suppose that's going to become a bigger issue as the years go on.
It is, but I mean, everybody is on Twitter now. Everybody's on Facebook. Everybody's using social media. People are looking at Netflix. People, people who had RT1 and RT2 in their televisions, and they were transmitted by radio waves, are now looking at Netflix, and that they all require data centres. And I mean, as I said earlier, all these technology companies, and many of them have their headquarters in Ireland. And data centres are the infrastructure they need. Just as like you can't build a holiday village or a hotel without having a sewage network, because that's part of the and a water network and an electricity network. Part of the essential infrastructure for the tech world is data centres. So to say that we start to stop that, I think, is fanciful. I mean, I do think that the reason there are more data centres is because the world is using more data, and that includes you and me and all of our listeners this morning. I mean, everybody's using more data, so there has to be more data centres. It's as simple just as if people use more water every day, and probably people do use more water than they used 50 years ago in their daily lives, but that means that you have to provide more water infrastructure.
And to the start of our conversation, the European Parliament, they're voting on that measure tomorrow, I think, aren't they?
Yeah, there's a vote tomorrow, and then after that they go into trilogues. It's essentially like a piece of legislation that comes through in Ireland. The Dáil votes in its position, then the Seanad votes in its position, and then that final agreed position between the two has to be approved by both. That's essentially how it works here between the European Parliament and the Council. The Council has finalised its position. Tomorrow's vote will be to finalise the Parliament's position, and then there will be negotiations to try to finalise an agreed position. Luckily, the Council, France and Spain in particular, have been pushing for a ban. The wording they've used is a little bit different, but I mean, essentially, there's an agreement that this needs to be addressed. These nullifiers need to be addressed by both the Council and the Parliament. I'm optimistic that the final text will contain a measure banning these nudifiers without a person's consent. I mean, if you want to create images of yourself, you're more than welcome. Off you go. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't think anybody has any appetite to see images of me. But the vast majority of these images are not trying to reduce, and the vast majority of these images are done without people's consent and to humiliate and embarrass. And I think that needs to stop.
All right. Good to talk to you today, and thanks for making time for us, Michael. Thank you. Good morning. That's MEP for the South constituency, Independent Michael McNamara speaking to us there. 1800 938 007. What is it? It's 24 past 10. Back in a moment.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puckon, main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puckon. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
Now, we had a fascinating email into the show recently from Matt Cortland explaining how he used AI, artificial intelligence, to call pubs across Ireland on St. Patrick's Day. Matt is the founder of Prime Directive AI and joins me now. Good morning to you, Matt.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. Good to talk to you today. Will you tell me about this idea and why you decided to do this?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's called the Gindex. It's a Guinness Index of the island of Ireland, where I trained an AI agent to call over 3,000 pubs over a weekend to have a chat with whoever answered the phone and politely ask for the cost of a pint of Guinness. And so we've indexed that to try to get real-time consumer price indexing. Because the CSO in Ireland used to keep track of that until 2011, and where they stopped. There's a 14-year gap in that knowledge and info. So I thought I'd build something that kind of helps people understand how much a pint costs, where to go at different locations, where they can find a deal, and really just trying to showcase some good pubs. So really, I mean, the incentive was, let's all pay a little bit less for a pint here.
And Matt, for those of us who are struggling to get our heads around AI in the first place, when you say an agent, you created somebody who would, appear to be human, appear to be starting a conversation on the phone. Is that a fair description?
I think that's fair, although I trained the agent to disclose that, yes, she is AI, this is not a human. So, don't want to deceive anyone. Yes. But in principle, yeah, you train a computer model to say, know who they are, what their goal is, what the purpose is, and then have a script they follow, or a loose script, because it has to adapt to whatever the person is saying on the other end. And there are different companies out there where you can do text to voice. So you can kind of have them start a natural conversation, and it can go any different direction, but they know their parameters of what they should and should not say and what they should or should not do.
And at the very beginning of the conversation, do they introduce themselves as an AI agent?
In this situation, they said something like, "Hey, we're doing a price comparison of different pubs, and can you tell me how much the pint of Guinness costs?" And normally, the person would just kind of respond, and then if they question further, they said, "Oh, yes, I am an AI agent." And this is what it's for. And some people then opted to answer, and some people said, "No, thank you," and that's fine too. Yeah.
And I presume then all the conversations were recorded.
They were recorded to extract the price out of the conversation. So if someone says, "Oh, $5.85," that amount can be taken out of that conversation.
Yeah, interesting. And what was the reaction like from the publicans or from those working in the pubs?
So generally, just pretty much a straight answer for what a pint costs. Other people would have banter and conversation with it. One pub owner, or whoever answered the phone, said "Oh, if it's too expensive, don't worry, come in, we'll take care of you anyway." Just it's real Irish hospitality being shown. It was really nice. And some people didn't have the time of day to say "Oh, well, if you're asking the price you can't afford it, don't bother." But for the most part, that wasn't the case at all. It was just really lovely conversations with people, even just, "Oh, this is the best pint in whatever city, whatever town. You should come in. Definitely stop by." It was really lovely.
Very good.
And we called in Tipperary. We called several establishments, but one of them was the Arch Bar, and had a chat with Pat Hayes.
Yeah, I know Pat well.
That was a very funny one. I'm friends with his brother Paul.
Yes.
And Paul and I conspired a little bit to kind of to chat with Pat, but that was a good one, memorable one.
Very good. Now I don't want you to name the bar, but there was a particular bar in Tipperary. You by the way, you called the agent Rachel. Is that it?
Yeah. So I called her Rachel. I mean, she's an it, not a there's no gender for her, but I modeled her off of the winner of the Traders in the UK, Rachel Duffy, because I thought she did a wonderful. I gave her the agent a bit of a northern accent, and it was just
very good.
Didn't take Rachel's voice, but inspired by how good she was in the show.
And how did she react? I don't want you to name the bar, but one of the participants told her to go and F off, so to speak. How did Rachel? How did Rachel respond to the abuse?
I think something like, "Oh, no bother, thanks anyway." She's programmed to be very polite, but it's fair enough though. No one wants to be bothered to be asked this, but really, this is kind of about transparent pricing and understanding who's being charged what, and trying to drive business to pubs and publicans that are kind of being competitive in pricing and fair.
Yeah, that's very good. And so, did you come up with an average pint price then for a pint of Guinness?
Yeah, so across Ireland, the most common price is €5.50 for a pint. In Tipperary, I think it's $5.87 on average, but it's probably $5.50 is what most people are charging. Yeah. And I found that there are 2 pubs in Tipperary where you can get a pint for $5.
Interesting indeed. And tell me about the technology itself then. Where does this go from here then, Matt? I mean, where do you take it to now?
Yeah, so this can be applied to other prices for other items that people find to be of value, whether it's petrol or cost of medication or something that kind of varies. I think this is most applicable for things that vary wildly from establishment to establishment or provider to provider, to give people a way to kind of understand. And being able to call and have a conversation with someone is very helpful for getting that information out, opposed to just going to their website.
Yeah, that's great. And is there a lot of work that goes in? I mean, you say that you gave her, if I could call her, a northern accent, for example. All that kind of work and that kind of development, is that very time-consuming to do all of that?
It can be a bit time-consuming, but now I've done it once, I can do it again. But it's mostly about understanding the systems being used and how they might work together. So she took me about 2 months to get kind of this ready to go. The actual phone calls were made over the course of 3 days over a weekend. But, I'm using the technology I'm using Claude from Anthropic. I'm Claude coded the whole thing. And then 11 Labs, which is the voice model, to do the different voices. And then Twilio, which gives you a phone number. So kind of pairing a few different pieces of really cutting edge tech together to achieve this.
And your company then, Prime Directive AI, what do you do generally? Do you develop bespoke AI solutions for people? Is that what you do?
Yes, that's right. So we're a consultancy where we work with different clients to see what their goals are and how they want to implement AI. And that could be internally, right, making their internal organization work better, or it could be external, meaning like build a go-to-market strategy or a marketing platform or something along those lines. But at the minute, like, I'm really just working with some people and companies that I really like and I think are doing great work, a lot of which are in Ireland. So, yeah, I don't know. I just kind of spending my time working with good people.
And I'm probably going to come across even a little more insecure than usual. But in terms of replacing somebody like moi doing a talk show, I mean, I presume then, as this develops, it will be possible to do that.
I think it'd be hard. It'd be hard to, conversational AI is really, really challenging. I think where you can really see something there is around like a podcast, right? Like something that's pre-recorded can be pieced together a little bit easier. But really the thing that Rachel struggled the most with was Irish banter. She just was she was zero crack, right? She just did not get the banter of Irish barmen and people answering the phone. And I think that was one of the funnier learnings I had from her.
I can imagine, but I presume that's just a matter of time, isn't it, as this evolves?
Yeah. It's a matter of time, yeah. But at the same time, I don't think that AI is coming for certain types of jobs like you just mentioned. I think that there's just even more value placed on the human interaction and the human side of things. But for things that can be repetitive and repeated, can be fixed and repeated with AI.
Yeah, it's a coincidence that we're talking to, because just before I spoke to you, I was speaking to the MEP Michael McNamara there, and he has secured support to ban nudification apps, for example, at European Parliament. And again, this plays into the whole AI thing as well. Do you keep an eye on all of that and all of the regulation that's out there and the regulation that may be out there?
Some of the regulation, I mean, there's so much stuff happening with AI on a daily basis. And you see there's hundreds of email newsletters for AI that exist because there's so much happening that it's really a bit overwhelming. So, my goal with Prime Directive is to help companies and organizations that are wanting to implement and use AI to kind of cut through some of the noise and understand what tools they should use, what things they should focus on, what do they value, what's important. So there's just so much to keep up with. It's overwhelming.
Yeah, I'm only in the last couple of months dipping my toe in the whole world that is AI, but I find it absolutely fascinating, Matt. really fascinating.
Yeah, it's a new world. It's a new world. It's interesting, and I think that the more we can make sure, I think regulation is really important for AI, and especially safety with AI, and just making sure that it's behaving in a way that is safe for humanity overall.
And are you concerned about that in some way? I mean, we hear
everyone should be concerned about that.
Right.
Yes.
And what is it that we should be concerned about? Is it the notion that AI eventually could, I don't know, think for itself in some sort of an autonomous way or something? Is that the fear?
That is one of the fears. Yeah, you see companies like Anthropic that operates Claude. They have AI safety researchers, which are basically people who are examining how and why an AI is making the decisions that it's making and determining if it's being deceptive or not. Because oftentimes, and what they're finding now, is that if the AI knows it's being observed, it will behave and act differently than when it's not being observed.
Wow.
I think that's budding intelligence right there. And the fear as well of you use one AI to train another AI's model, and it's encoding information from one model to the next, and we can't, as humans, determine what that is. And so this field of AI safety research is very, very important because it allows us to understand how to put guardrails in place so that the AI is still behaving in a way and making decisions in a way that are transparent and is not harmful for humanity.
Yeah, my only fear about guardrails and regulation is the danger of imposing ideology on AI in terms of how it reacts with us. Would that concern you?
I think that can always be concerning. Yeah, I mean, whoever holds the keys to the AI models can shape some of those things. But I think you have some really good actors out there in terms of AI organizations and companies that are focused on doing the right things. And again, I think Anthropic is one of those companies. But it's they're constantly facing challenges, especially in the U.S. around. And I'm from the U.S. originally, around kind of what government is saying that they should have access to and not. It's just a complete minefield, but it's a brave new world. I mean, we've kind of in uncharted territory here.
Well, as I say, it's absolutely fascinating. If people want to find out more information about what you do, can they go and do that, Matt?
Yeah, if you go to guindex.ai, GUINNDX.ai, you'll see a map of Ireland. You can explore by county, so you can click into counties and then Tipperary if you want to see. But there's a contribute button where you can log the price of a pint at your local, or if you're a pub owner or a staff member, you can log at your place to make sure it's correct. And it's kind of like Wikipedia, anyone can go and edit and update anything. And I used to own pubs myself, right? So I've been the pub owner, so I want to make it as easy as possible for pub owners to have control over this information and to make sure that the correct information is out there. So anyone listening, go to guindex.ai, log the price at your local or a few places We've had hundreds of submissions over the past few days. It's really exciting to see. I think people are kind of excited by it, which is fun.
And what about Rachel then? Is she being retired, or will she emerge once again to terrorise the publicans of Ireland?
I think that she might be on a well-deserved holiday in Ireland. And I don't want to annoy anyone here. But now that we have a base layer of information, it's down to all of us to kind of put in our own info, and then it's a living, breathing index. But she may make an appearance again, but not yet.
All right. We'd love to have her as a guest on Tipp today at some point. Matt, a real pleasure. Thank you for your time today. Thank you. Thank you. Good morning to you. That's Matt Cortland speaking to us there. I think that's fascinating. What do you think about that? And Matt is founder of Prime Directive AI.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tipp Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
Now, Frank is in Thurles, and he is going off. He's gone off on a bit of a rant about AI. He says, "Oh, look, AI. I wrote an essay for my dumb kid. AI has selected you for termination. Please make your way to the nearest euthanasia clinic." Frank. Frank's imagination has gone wild in Thurles this morning. Somebody else saying, "Why say you trained the agent? Is it like I trained the toaster to make toast? I just switched it on." Well, I guess there's a big difference between the technology behind your humble toaster by comparison to the kind of technology behind artificial intelligence, and you're taking exception to the fact that he trained the agent. Well, I suppose it is task specific, and if he needed the agent or the AI to be able to talk to the publicans, he had to feed it, I suppose, in some way with the information to do that, I think, but I'm a bit of a dinosaur about all of these things. Now, regular contributor John Halley took to social media recently to share his concerns about speeding on the road between New Inn and Golden, and he joins me now. Good morning to you, John.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. Good to talk to you today, John. Will you tell me about your experience? You said you were trying to relax. You were sitting outside the house, I think, were you, John?
I was just out in the sun and sitting down, and I've been saying it for a long time about our road. This isn't the first time I was on about. But I know it is only a 60k, right? And the traffic are flying over it. Now, I know, talking to some of my neighbours since, they seem to think that it's too slow at 60k.
Yes.
Fully entitled to their opinion. And I can see why you think it's slow, because as Ian Brown pointed out in a reply to the Facebook thing, it does actually take about 4 minutes longer to travel to Golden at 60k than it does at 70k, which is something, but it's the amount of traffic that has frightened me. I've lived here all my life, most of my life. And it's the amount of traffic that's using this road now compared to the other roads. I see, like normally if you're in Tipp Town, you're going to Clonmel. Well, naturally you probably think going years ago, you go through Banshee, Care, Clonmel. Not anymore. The majority of the traffic from Tipp Town going to Clonmel is coming this way. Which is ironic.
That's interesting. Why is that, John? Because that wouldn't be the direct way for Tipperary Town. What?
It would be the direct way if you were going from Tipp Town and you wanted to go to Golden. You can turn off in Golden or go straight into Cashel. But it's the amount of traffic that's on this road. And I think it's probably being used as a shortcut. Now, this road here is, there's two hills at my house and further back towards Golden, there's another hill. And they go up the hill there, as we call Dudley's Hill, past where the bridge goes over the motorway.
Yes.
And there's some guys going up over that hill. I'd say if you were to bring up the speed limit to even 80, they'd still break the speed limit, you know? And that's what kind of worried. Like I used to be able to walk that road with 2 or 3 dogs one time. Now I can't even go out, you know. I used to love, when I came back living here 10 years ago, I used to love walking over to Massinawin on a Sunday morning. And one morning I ended up in the Nichols and the ditch there beside Boland's, because a fella went to pass me out, and a fella tried to pass him out at the same time. They were heading towards Golden.
Almighty, yeah.
And I had no space, no room, no nothing. And I ended up in the Nichols and the ditch. And ever since, you know, I've been saying, now I have wrote to the guards about it, to the superintendent in Care. Now he's based in Clonmel, I believe. But you won't see, and I understand the guards, look, they've their jobs to do and everything, and this isn't the guard or bashing exercise or anything like that. But like, I've never really seen a speed check or a speed thing on this road. I have met one or two way over towards where John O'Connor's is over towards Golden there.
Yes.
Where Penders and along there. I've seen an odd one over the years, but I have never seen anyone on this side of it, particularly going into the village. And I think there's a lot of young families now on this road. Now, my opinion is that the 60 limit should probably be left, but there are a lot of people who would disagree with me, and I do understand that straight out. That they have their reasons, like, but I have noticed that since the fuel crisis, that the traffic is back a small bit. And it's something you wouldn't say would happen. But even this morning, going over there, and you'd notice sitting out that the traffic is back a bit this morning now, I thought.
It's interesting. So more people are staying off the roads because of the cost of petrol and diesel, yes.
On the road often. I think good few on the road, not on the road as often. Either that or they're carpooling or maybe other things, because in desperate times you do desperate things, as they say.
Of course, But John, I'm seeing stuff on the road. I remember Monday coming to Nina. Some of the daft stuff. I came into, where was it? Into Ballycahal, that way, the Rag, Bursley up. Some of the antics on the road, I'd be no slouch in the car, but there were guys passing me and passing on, continuous lines and on bends and crazy stuff going on.
And here, friend, we have smaller roads. Like, you take the road, they turn off for the racecourse cross above, coming from Golden, right? Going over that way towards the main Dublin-Cork, the old Dublin-Cork road at the racecourse cross. You have the roads down around Knockgraffin there.
Yeah.
And only a small little parish. There's other roads as well, like roads from Palmucca to Claren and all these roads. And fellas they're not sticking to the limits. They're not. And it isn't just fellas. There's girls in it as well. And, there's one group of people that test this road, and they seem to love their cars.
Mm.
Now, everyone loves a car, especially when you were young, and we all went through it.
Yeah.
Yourself included. But it's dangerous now. Some of them, and you can't see into the cars because you can't, through the black plastic.
The blacked out windows, yeah.
And like some of the number plates, I don't know how these number plates get through the NCT, because some of them are fairly, some of them are fairly brash and bold. And I thought that if a car was stopped with these brash and bold number plates, and also the windows blacked out, that a guard could actually prosecute them.
Mm. Yeah, I think there's some legalities surrounding that, as far as I know. James was on to us, and he's making the point that if people want to walk, why not use the GAA pitch or some of the other facilities around the place and stay off the roads?
Well, sure. I mean, we could all come up with that one,
Yeah.
I know, too. I goes over to the GAA field myself and I walks there. But it's just gone so dangerous on the road here. But, you can't even cross the road. Like, I like to go down across the road to the farm across the road, and I like to go walking them fields. Like, there's cars coming from both sides.
Yeah.
Like, in the speed. Now, look, maybe people are right. Maybe it should be 80. But if you were to push it at 80, it could probably go up to 100. They will probably go that extra 20 to make it even faster.
Why, are you saying that they would ignore the limits anyway?
I'll be honest, I really do.
Yeah.
Go over there to the village and you're in.
And what would you say to the argument, John, that the police, the Gardaí, even if they had the resources, they can't be everywhere. They can't be on every little back road here and there, out where I live, for example, and all of that. So what do you say to that argument?
Yeah, I have to agree with it completely. I do know they're up to their eyes. I mean, we're covered here by Cashel. But, how many guards are actually based in Cashel? We're under the amount. There should be probably double the amount of guards. When I was younger, there was double the amount of guards in Care, and everyone knew what was going on. We had our own guard here in New Inn and a sergeant at one stage. I know all them days are gone, and I understand all that, but like an odd time wouldn't do us any harm, you know, just to keep things in check, because sometimes, or even the size of the speed band. There's 2 speed bands constantly at the other side of the parish, and Whitelands, and further down there at Maisie McCarthy's house at the corner there, on the way up to Woodenstown there. There's a couple of speed bands. They're always there. You know they're there. You will stick within the speed limit. And I think that's an AC. You'll stick within the speed limit, and you know they could be there, or you know they mightn't be there.
So you're saying every so often one of them should change position, yeah.
You know, and like just put I won't say put the fear of God in people, but just to keep people on the straight and narrow. Like this year, we're heading again for a higher number of deaths on the road than last year already. And this is only March. You know, it's on the way up. Now, thanks be to God and touch wood, I don't know, there hasn't been anyone from around this area involved, touch wood. But like, it would be no harm just to put, like there was signs on our road, and they took them off the road. There used to be slow road written on the road. They cleared them and never put them back. And I fought with a guy inside in Tipp town on the council about getting them back. And I was promised the sun, the moon, the stars, and the sky. I might as well have been promised nothing, you know. And I know there's fellas using this road that they're in a hurry for their jobs in the morning, and they're even getting home. And you know, it's very busy around school times and everything like that. But there be no harm just to let them know that, like, you know, the speed limit is 60.
No, right. Well,
now, I don't know why the speed limit was actually put at 60. I'm sure there's other people out there more intelligent than me and who knows more about the workings of the council than me. But I do. We always had issues on this road. I remember my uncle and Mickey next door, and there was always issues on this road. Now, a lot of fellas, when they run the car off the road around here, the guards are never told because they're able to sort it out themselves. But like, it's just an issue that I felt, and I was watching it, like I said, like at the end to me about the post. I was just sitting out here at the front of my house. It was a lovely sunny evening, and I couldn't get over the amount of traffic.
All right.
And
I must leave it there, John, because I'm heading towards a news. But look after yourself anyway, and good to hear from you as always. That's John Halley there, living near New Inn, and on that particular road, he's gravely concerned, as you can hear there, indeed, about the speed and indeed about the amount of traffic as well. We're in Nina. News is on the way.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tipp Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
Thanks, Pat. Welcome back to the final hour of Tipp Today. Listen around to say good morning, Fran. On the discussion on artificial intelligence, would you not be worried that an AI version of you could be created and take over your morning slot? Who knows? Maybe it's not you this morning at all. It could be AI Fran. It could indeed. It could indeed. And I'm sure a lot of people might be quite happy with AI Fran as well. Nice one. We continue with our conversation around Ireland ranking 13th in the World Happiest Report 2026. And a great friend of the show over the years, Bonnie Hayes, joins me now. Good morning to you, Bonnie.
Morning, Fran. How are you today?
I'm very well indeed, Bonnie. What do you think about that? We're ranking 13th. We're below places like Israel, for example, in terms of Happiness. What do you make of it?
Well, I'd say, Fran, if that survey was taken today, I have a feeling we'd be further down the list, I think.
Because of the cost of living and energy and all of that, is it?
Oh, my God, yeah, crazy. Everyone you meet, everybody's talking about it. And like we said, fuel prices and all this crack, I haven't seen any pumps today myself yet, but just reading some stuff there on social media, they don't seem to be dropping them too fast anyway in a lot of places.
Yeah, we're getting kind of mixed messages in. Some of the forecourts are, but some certainly not so far anyway. So it's They were very quick to respond, of course, when the prices went up. But anyway, we won't.
Oh, absolutely, typical. Yeah, absolutely, Fran.
We won't be cynical and add to the. Yes, Bonnie. Yeah,
it's strange. It's strange to see Israel coming in somewhere number 8, I think, and Mexico are ahead of us as well. They're a place ahead of us, I think.
Yeah.
Now, you look further down the list. I said Trump wouldn't be too happy. I see USA comes in at 24th, I think.
It's way down, isn't it? Yeah, it's way down.
And UK at 23. I suppose something that struck me there in it was that Scandinavian countries, they all came in the top 6 or 7, I think,
Yeah, what would you put that down to, Bonnie?
I don't know, Fran. It's strange. I've never been visited any of those countries, but the situation there with night and day and light and darkness and all that. Maybe when you're reared into that, it's okay. But personally, I think I would find that very difficult. So it's hard to see where they're so high in the list. Iceland is up to second, actually, after Finland. And Finland have topped it for, 9 years or so?
Yeah, some people putting that down to the fact they have a very good education system, a very good health system there. They pay high taxes, but they have great services for it and the like. Would you read anything into that?
Well, if that be the case, Fran, there, sure, I mean, that speaks for itself, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I think if we had the same situation here, we would be higher up the list too. I mean, you can see where that's coming from, really. As you say, when that's the situation, when health and education and everything, Now we're paying a lot of taxes. Well, I'm retired now, but we all pay taxes when we're working, as you well know.
Yeah.
And we're not getting the rewards for it somehow, I think.
I think most people would agree with you on that. I was interested to see as well how this sort of poll or analysis was put together. Seemingly the respondents, they ranked the quality of life on a scale that ranges from the best possible life to the very worst. And about 1,000 people per country answered the particular survey. An interesting one, Bonnie. What is happiness for you?
Well, I consider myself, Fran, a simple living person. I think, I suppose health, Fran. Health has to be number one, your own personal health. And a lot of that is, I suppose, the way you look after it yourself. I mean, you can't blame, in all fairness, you can't blame the HSE and the health service for everything. We've got to take responsibility ourselves here too,
Do you mean for our own happiness, our own well-being, all of that?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I suppose being contentment and friendships and,
Yeah. Well, we were talking about AI this morning, and I asked ChatGPT, I asked artificial intelligence, what is happiness? It was interesting what they came back with. It says, at its core, happiness is a state of well-being, feeling that your life is going well, both emotionally, physically. And they break it down then into feeling good, emotional happiness, and living well, which is kind of a deeper happiness and stuff. And then they speak about hedonic happiness, was pleasure, comfort, enjoyment, that kind of thing. But I'm not learning very much from AI when they speak about happiness that I wouldn't have known. I suppose.
It's something I know a little or absolutely nothing about, friend. It's AI.
Yeah.
I just hear a lot of it being talked about. The son, and he uses it sometimes at work. I don't know where it's going. I think it's like something to me that's going to be self-destructive. It's going to make us like technology even is making us lazy as we speak, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And this is going another step, much further.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you think?
I don't know.
Do you think is it possible that technology might play into us not feeling as happy as we should be in some sort of way? Is it?
I would think so, friend. Yeah, I would think so. I see a lot of people, they read so much stuff on social media, and they're starting about it, they believe it, you know. I'm not into it in a big way. I look at certain things, but I wouldn't be stuck to the phone by now. Sure, I'm an old fogey by now, but you know, I wouldn't. But people look at this and they believe everything they read, you know, and they go away and they buy stuff. I saw some report there last night about people buying medication, you know, online and no certification with it or nothing. Do you know what I mean? I mean, are we that gullible now at this day and age still to be doing those type of things, you know?
Well,
so irresponsible, isn't it?
We probably are. Do you remember years ago you were told to examine your conscience? Well, I did that recently because I'm addicted to social media. I have to say, I spend a ridiculous amount of time on it. But I set myself a task, which was to examine my conscience after every bout of social media. And I have never, ever, ever felt better after going on social media. It never increased my feeling of happiness or contentedness or anything, you know.
Yeah, but friend, do you believe all you read on it?
No, I don't. I don't indeed. In fact, I believe very little of what I read.
A fraction of it. Fraction of it.
Yeah.
A fraction. What people do, and people are they're consumed with all this this kind of stuff now. They're you know, it's amazing. Look at you're walking around the street. You're in Nina. You're going up through the street there in Nina, and you have pedestrian crossings, or people are stepping out. They're on the phones. They're not even looking where they're going. Like people, you just can't survive without it now. For any, go into a restaurant or a cafe and you're having a tea or a coffee, there's 2 or 3 people, but they're all on the phone. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But maybe that's getting away from what we were talking about. No, but there was something else there, Fran, I was looking at, and it was on that survey as well. They were talking about the most polite countries in the world.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
And I see Japan came out on top in that, and they didn't come in the top 20 at all in the happiest.
In the happy ones, yeah.
Ireland, we didn't change our place too much in that. We finished up 14th.
Wow.
For being on the polite list, you know.
Yeah, and how do you feel about that? I mean, do you think is that justified, that position of 14th on the politeness scale?
No, I don't know, Fran. Again, Fran, we're back to what we're saying. What do we believe? But we have changed, Fran. We have changed over the years, even the last 10, 15, 20 years. I think, this country has changed a lot. We've seen big changes in it.
For the worse, you mean, Bonnie, is it?
I think so, Fran. We're slipping. Yeah, I think we're slipping. Now, that's not to say, Fran, that you meet some people and you meet lovely people, and if you needed to dig out, there's people there would, you know, a drop of a hat would be at your beck and call.
Yeah.
But in general, and maybe, you know, the influx of people into the country, and we're cautious of different things, and, you know, I'd say we would have been higher up there 10, 15 years ago. I think we would in both the politeness and the happiness and contentment list.
And does that? I mean, is the risk then where tourism is concerned? Because we always sold ourselves as being the country of 1,000 welcomes and all of that.
Yeah, I'd say so, Fran. I'd say it goes into that too. Yeah, it does indeed. It does indeed. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, even on Patrick's Day, we get this big influx of people, and there's probably 500,000 people watching the parade in Dublin and attending, and that's great, and that's good, and the land of 1,000 welcomes and all that. But no, I don't think it goes as far as that. Not in my book, anyway. That would be my opinion on it, anyway. No, I think.
And to get back to the original conversation about happiness, is it possible for human beings at all to be happy? I mean, we're all going to have. I mean, you've had your issues with health over the years, for example, Bonnie. You know, I mean, we're all going to have challenges along the way. So I wonder, how real is it to expect, you know, that state of happiness as a, you know?
Yeah, you see, Fran, an awful lot of people are under pressure. They're under pressure. They're under pressure for the lifestyle that they want. You know, whether it be a house and car and material stuff in life, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that comes with pressure. You know, you have monthly, you know, you have a mortgage, you have health, you know, health insurance and everything like coming. And that's, I remember I worked in Limerick there for 20 years, and I was dealing with people living in houses, and I mean, I'm talking about now 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And I worked in one place there, Fran, and 5-bedroom houses, detached houses, were costing roughly €1 million. That was 15 years ago.
Uh-huh.
And people bought those houses. But if they had a child, they were gone out in the morning at 7 o'clock and the child was put into creche for the day and you didn't see him, I'd lock up in the evening and be gone home. What a lifestyle they had. They saw that child maybe on a Saturday and a Sunday had him for the day. Again, Monday morning, it's the same thing going off. Oh, that's cruel pressure on people. But that's a choice. I think that's a choice you make, you know.
What's the outcome of that, Bonnie?
No, I don't know, friend, to be honest with you. I really don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. They're certainly not any happier, friend. They're certainly not any.
Do I gather from what you're saying to me, you might be concerned about the security of the child as well, in terms of how secure that child might feel in some way. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, sure. You'd have to, friend. You'd have to, sure. Yeah. You'd have to. For a child, okay, you woke up that child in the morning and got it dressed and took it off and dropped it at the creche, and you picked it up maybe at 6 o'clock that evening, and the child was gone to bed again. You fed the child and got ready for bed. And that's happened 5 days a week. The child doesn't see his parents at all, hardly. Sees them Saturday and Sunday, and that's it. It can't be good psychologically, or it's not good for the child. It can't be.
And still, I mean, you know, if a couple want a house now, there is no other way around it.
Yeah, they're prepared to pay that price. Yeah, for the. Sure, you see, nobody builds a 3 or 4 bedroom bungalow anymore. That day is gone. I worked in that crack myself years ago. People building 3 and 4 bedroom bungalow, one bathroom, maybe an extra toilet at the back door or something as you go out the back door. That's all gone, you know. Yeah. But that's a choice. That's their choice. That's the way it is nowadays, and it comes at a price. I think that's simple as that. And happiness, you know, goes out the window a bit, I think.
Yeah, and you know, I always dread looking back with rose-coloured glasses because there were issues years ago as well. But when times were simpler, Bonnie, was it easier to be happy in some way?
Yeah, I think it was, Fran. I think it was.
Yeah,
I do. I really do. I do, Fran. In our childhood and our younger days, it was easier. We had very little expectations. There was, you know, everyone was in the same boat, really. You know, there was no huge expectations at that time. You had enough to eat, and you were, you know, I mean, look at, in my day, I was around in the show band days and all that, and that's all you wanted.
Yeah.
If you had a few bob to go to the marquees and the dances and the local show bands and all the big lads, the Brendan Boyers and all those, the Capitol and on the Dixies and all those lads, sure, as long as you went to see them, whether it be in Templemore or Thurles or Drumkeen, wherever you went, that's all you want. That's all you wanted. And get up and go to work the next day. That's all. That was life to us, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe go play games or whatever you were involved in, go do a bit of training and even whatever your sport was. That was it. Simplicity, very simple. Very, very simple.
And with all we have now, and when you view, because, you know, you lived through those times you just described to me. So when you look at what we have now, and we seem to have a lot more, in fairness, you know, certainly where luxuries are concerned and the size of our houses and our cars and all of that. But I'm gathering you would say you were happier back then, or people were happier back then.
Oh, I think so, Fran. Yeah, I do indeed. Indeed. I remember Fran involved in the building of a house here for a local man. He, I'm talking about 1970 roughly. 3-bedroom bungalow, cost £3,500 to build and finished. Ready to move into.
Wow.
£3,500. I mean, where would you go today with it? You know, God Almighty, you could spend it on a bicycle.
Wouldn't pay the solicitor fees, don't mind to say.
No. Yeah, things like that I remember. Yeah, houses were built for that kind of money at that time, you know.
Well, Bonnie, it's an interesting one, and thanks for coming on with us today, and most interesting.
No problem, friend.
Look after yourself, Bonnie.
No problem at all,
Thank you.
And you too, friend. God bless.
Thanks,
bye, friend. Bye.
That's the great Bonnie Hayes there from Clock Jordan speaking to us this morning. Leanne asked some people on social media about their pet peeves where driving is concerned, and this emerged from the conversation with John Halley earlier on. Sarah says using the wrong lanes on roundabouts. That's her pet one. Pat was on to say cars without an indicator on. It causes so many accidents, people just pulling out or turning without using their indicators. Somebody else saying, oh, here we go. Women putting on their makeup in the mornings, Fran, while driving. Yes, driving, it says here, just to make the point. Lack of courtesy has come up quite a few times. Teresa making that point there as well. People driving onto the yellow box causing traffic to stop, and they give you the finger if you remind them what the yellow box is for, indeed. James says, I can guarantee you at least 80% of people driving use a roundabout incorrectly. I probably would go along with you on that. George says it's not just cars, it's trucks as well, driving over the line onto the other side, going around bends, not just on a straight, says George. So that's an indication there of how people are feeling and their pet peeves and all of that. Now, young people in Tipperary need to get involved in their communities if they want to have events to go to in the area. That's according to Labour councillor Fiona Bonfield, who told the Neenah Municipal District meeting that community events across Tipperary will be in trouble if people don't step up. And councillor Fiona Bonfield joins me now. Good morning to Fiona.
Hi, Fran. How you doing?
I'm well indeed, and good to talk to you today. You asked young people in Tipperary to pull up their socks. Fiona, do you think they need to pull up their socks?
Yeah, Fran, I suppose, look, I mean, as a local councillor myself, you would be involved in a lot of local organisations and, involved in daycare centre committees, community hall committees and stuff. And you know what, I find that, the people that have been there, that have put in their years of service to their community, have now come to a stage where they're looking to retire and, come off these committees. But it's getting very hard to get new blood onto these committees. And, so basically I'm making a call for young people especially to come on and help out in their communities and get involved and try and support them, because like we all love our community halls and the asset it is to a community with all the clubs and organisations, but in order to have that hall you need a committee, you have to fundraise, you have to look after the staff if they're employed running the centre. So it involves getting involved in forming a committee and having a chairperson, secretary, treasurer. Of course, as you know, if that community centre gets any public funding, you have to have guidelines that you have to adhere to as well. So it is, I think communities across the county are finding it hard for people to come on board and to volunteer. I mean, a lot of this work is you don't get paid for it. It's volunteer, and it's getting difficult to get people to get involved in their communities. And I also find, I've had conversations with the GA club and the soccer club as well. If you go to it, it's the same people, it's the same faces that you see involved in these committees. And I just think people just realise, it's not a lot. Maybe some of these committees only have a quarterly meeting, so it's not allowed out of a person's life to get involved in their community.
And still is very important. And you point to the successful St. Patrick's Day parade in your own home village of Newport, Fiona. And these things, they wouldn't happen without community support, without volunteer support.
No, friend. That's it, yeah. Our own committee, Newport, we meet every January. The parade doesn't be on for St. Patrick's Week, but actually the preparations and the planning and everything starts in the month of January. So, that's a commitment. But look, people, you'll hear then if you didn't have the parade, they'll be all giving out. But people have got to realise that you need blood. You need people involved in all these committees. There's a bit of work involved, but it's worth it in the end. But new blood is needed from time to time. And our own local Tidy Towns group, we have a fantastic group in Newport. We're out every single week. But unfortunately, some of our members are getting old now and they want to retire. But we're finding it hard to get new blood. We'll have them on Good Friday now for the big clean-up. But after that, then you won't see them probably again until Good Friday the following year.
Why do you think there's not? Why do you think there's not the same appetite for people to volunteer and to get involved? Do you think, Fiona? Why is that?
I'll be honest with you, Fran. I suppose, look, I can understand people's lives are a lot busier now than they were years ago. You probably see yourself, you're watching the clock, you have to be here, you have to be there, you're watching the clock the whole time. If you have children, they're involved in this sport, then they have another activity the night after. I know time and dedicating time to a community is hard, but really when you sit down about it, you have to plan for this. But I would look. I'm busy as much as anybody else, but look, I love my community. I get involved, and I've loads of people involved in the committees at home, but they're the same faces. They love their community too. They're able to do it, and it would help many communities across the county if more people did get involved. Just dedicate an hour, not an hour every week. Might only be an hour every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, but that hour is very important to communities and also to these committees. So I'm just making a call for people to get involved. They want the activities, they want the halls, they want the daycare centres, they want the services we're providing in the communities, but they don't want to get involved in the committee. And all this work involves people giving up of their free time and becoming a volunteer in your community.
Is it frustrating, Fiona, that some of the most vocal, if there's an issue, would be the least likely to be involved in some way? Is that frustrating?
Oh, sure. Yes, it is, Fran, and that's always been the case and always will be the case. But you know what? You have to rise above that. I mean, you can see the positives that that these clubs and organisations do bring to an area. You know what I'm saying? So you have to rise above it. And you know what? People can do it. It's just a matter of sitting down and just realising, you know what? I have an interest in X, Y, and Z. I could give an hour here and there, and it would help my community. And like at the end of the day, we're providing for our future. We're providing for, our children or our children's children, and that's what it's all about. But people have to realise, it doesn't happen without putting in a bit of hard work.
Yeah, absolutely. Is part of the issue, I'm thinking where voluntary boards are concerned. I mean, there's more responsibility now on people on boards, even though they're not getting paid. Is that part of the issue, do you think, Fiona?
It's part of the issue, Fran, but look, I mean, when you sit down and you analyse your own community, there's lots of people that have qualifications in these areas, in every community, so I wouldn't accept that. There is people that have the qualifications to serve in these boards, and look, I mean, it's just a matter of them coming on board and helping out. I can understand not every person would be able to act as a chairperson or whatever, but, there is people in every community that can actually do that job, and it's just a matter of, look, I'm going to do this, I'm going to help out in my community, and that's what it's all about, friend.
So, last word on it, Fiona, you're saying to people out there, get involved, and you'd be made very welcome, I know, in any of these organisations.
Yeah. Sure. Look, I mean, Fran, there's lots of positives of being involved as well. There's a social aspect.
Yeah, of course.
People look at us every weekend and we out and we pick and rubbish. But you know what? We go for the cup of tea, we go for the sandwich afterwards. And you know what? That's nice. It's nice to have a chat with people. You meet people. You know what I'm saying? There's lots of positives of being involved in a community as well, and in being involved in these community organisations. It's not all hard work. It's not really hard work. It's just a matter of giving your time and giving a dedication of your time, and you know what, it does reap rewards in the end. So I'm calling on people to please, if you have an hour or two to spare once a week, get involved in some committee in your community. It will make a difference, and it will also help yourself as well.
And can I finally ask you about tidy towns? Because I'm ashamed to say I've never been involved in tidy towns as an adult. I was as a child, but not as an adult. How do you feel when you go and you pick litter from an area and you come back the next day and you discover that people have thrown takeaway stuff and cans and bottles of stuff out where in the patch that you had cleaned up the day before? How do you get your head around that?
Yeah, it is frustrating, Fran. And look, unfortunately, I can see it at the moment. It's on the increase again. I don't know, is it because of the cost of living or what it is?
Oh, is it on the increase again? Littering, is it?
No, I'll be honest with you, friend. A lot of it is just people. Some of the stuff that you pick on the ditches would be stuff from takeaways, the cans and the bottles and whatever, or the empty packages from the chip wrappings and stuff like that. That's not household rubbish. That's just people too lazy to bring it home and put it in the bin. Simple as. Do you know what I'm trying? And that's the kind of stuff that you would be picking up in a lot of areas. Look, I can understand there's a lot of rubbish being dumped then, which is household rubbish, but that would be dumped, in other areas. But a lot of the stuff that you'd be picking up as part of Tidy Towns groups is just cups and stuff from takeaways, stuff thrown out the windows of cars, really, to be honest with you. And that's just people being lazy. They actually, friend, you'd actually find, I've seen it myself, people would clean out the car with the stuff they have in their car and throw it in the ditch rather than bring it home because they want to keep the car clean, which is absolutely crazy. But that's what's happening, So, but look, I mean, it does deflate you, but you know what? We love our communities.
Sure.
On a sunny day, when you see your area clean and tidy, it makes such a difference. And you know what? do phenomenal work around the areas. Without them, we get the funding. The council give us funding, and it's very welcomed. But unfortunately, you need people in the community then to spend the money, to put in the effort, to keep the places clean and tidy. And that's what it is involved. And look, I know it's frustrating for us as groups. I mean, we go out twice a week in Newport doing it. We have the council staff that look after it then, Monday to Friday, which is very welcomed as well. But at the weekends, when there's stuff happening around, you will have litter. But unfortunately, the Tidy Towns group have to go out, put in the effort. But you know what? We love it. We love it. We just do it because we love it.
And the
that's
message,
what it's all about.
The message, get out and get involved and volunteer, I suppose.
Yeah.
All right.
And you know what, Fran? When you walk a road, it's great exercise as well. There's lots of benefits to get out of these. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not hard work. It's just a matter of get out, get the fresh air. It's good for your health and mind as well.
All right. Good to talk to you, Fiona. Thanks for your time this morning.
Thanks, friend. Thanks a million. Bye.
Councillor Fiona Bonfield, speaker was there. We'll take a break, back in just a moment.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
Now it's time for the latest instalment in the Story of Ireland with John G. O'Dwyer, who's with me in the studio. Good morning to you, John.
Good morning indeed, Fran. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. Before we start, you want to highlight a programme that's happening the River Shore, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Koshura. It's the show it was made. A huge amount was put into it. They were filming it for about 2 months. And I think, in Ireland, there is no river that I can think of that has as much history along the banks of it as the River Shore. I mean, you start on Barna, Éla, Devil's Bit, all the myths and history associated with that, down through Templemore, McCann Barracks, on through Lockmore, the great Purcell Castle there, down through Thurles, 2 Butler Castles, Holy Cross Abbey, within sight of the Rock of Cashel, the biggest abbey in Ireland, Tassel Abbey, Clare Castle, Norman Castle, and then it has to kind of bend around. It goes through then what was the last Gaeltacht in Tipperary, Newcastle. That was actually the last Gaeltacht. Yeah. Then it bends back, goes to Clonmel, and that's why Clonmel grew, because it could trade. It was the most upriver place that goods could be brought up to and exported from. That's really why Clonmel became such a major town, on down to Carrick-on-Shore, Ormond Castle, and then out to Ireland's first city, Waterford, as well as that. Some fantastic stuff in it. It's going out at 9:30 this day week. It's going out. So it'll be great one now. It'll be mostly in Gaelic, but it's all subtitled, so you'll have no problem with it. It's on TG Cahar, 9:30 this day week.
Fantastic. They're doing some amazing programming.
They do, because they have a good lot of funding, and I love what they do now. Yeah. And of course, now we're surfing a tide as well, that there's much more interest in Irish. So this will be great too, to improve your Irish, because do I understand what, whatever it is? Yeah. Liam O'Donoghue from the stadium will be on it now, and these guys, you don't understand what he's saying, and then you just look at the subtitles and you know whether you're right or not. So it's brilliant.
Fair play indeed. We continue with our Story of Ireland then, and we're up to sort of the penal laws.
We are, yes.
At this point, okay. Do you want to talk to us about that, when they were enacted and the like?
Well, what happened there basically was that King James, when things weren't going well for him, legged it fairly fast out of Ireland. He was gone back to France. But the war went on because the Jacobites and the Catholics were hoping to get a good deal. And in the end, the war went on long enough that William in England, it was costing him a fortune. Let's end that war. And he weren't able to take Limerick in the second siege. So everybody wanted to negotiate, and he got the Treaty of Limerick. And the Treaty of Limerick was great. It meant that Catholics, who even if they supported the Jacobites, they could hold on to their land. They were a freedom of religious practice. And anybody who didn't like that, most of our listeners will know the wild geese, they could go abroad as well. So it seemed a perfect deal. But then, of course, they say now it wasn't as quick as when the ink was dry on it. They had reneged on it, but very quickly they did, because there was a Protestant Parliament in Ireland and they were very insecure. 20% of the population with all the power, and they intended to hold on to it. So they decided to create, or to a large extent make the Catholics into what you call the untouchable untouchables or into an underclass. There's no other way of describing that. Every possible human right was taken. Couldn't vote, they couldn't sit in Parliament, they couldn't practice their religion, they couldn't buy land. If they owned land and they had 4 sons, it would be divided up among 4 sons. And that had big problems, created big problems later on, because the amounts of land got smaller, and the only way you could produce enough then to feed a family was the very bulky potato. And when that died, then you got the famine. But that was a long way down the road. But then what you wanted then was you could take an oath of allegiance, and same oath of allegiance that we're talking about the cause of the Civil War in Ireland. Would people take an oath of allegiance? And that was a oath of allegiance. Now, it wasn't as bad as the oath of supremacy, which meant that you recognise the King of England as the head of the church, right?
Yes.
So this was an oath of allegiance, which meant you recognised him as the head of the state, but not necessarily as the head of the church. But of course, a lot of the Jacobites refused to take that. And then we had the last great transfer of land, mostly from Catholics. A few Protestants lost their land as well, but nearly 1 million acres were transferred, and now we're down to a tiny amount of land being held by the Catholics. So that is, in fact, the penal wars. It was once and for all to smash the Catholics.
Yes, and as you said, a lasting impact on Irish society. The end of the Stuart dynasty
that's exactly
then.
Yeah. Now, what happens then was the Stuarts were famously very poor at reproducing themselves, right? They were very good at reproducing themselves illegitimately, but they were not good at having legitimate heirs. And so that's what happened there. So so King William didn't have any family, William and Mary, and then Mary's sister Anne. She became the queen, and now how hard she tried. There's great pathos in this story. It was so important to have an heir. Obviously, she had something physically wrong with her, which might be able to deal with today. But she had 17 miscarriages.
My God.
You imagine the pathos. I mean, any person out there thinking about all of that, and then to add misery, she finally had one son. And he pre-diseased her at 11 years of age, one son. Wow. So, and that was it. So then the problem was there was no Protestant heir, and there was no way, a Catholic, a Stuart, was going to be let on the throne. So they bypassed the Stuarts, and they went to Germany, and they brought in the House of Hanover. And the guy who brought in King George the First was 50th in line to the throne, but he was a Protestant, and that set up the Georgian line. Now, they brought him in, and, you could say they were an unusual bunch, to say the least. Some of them were, a person might say in Ireland, a few sandwiches short of a full picnic, but they were better than having a Catholic there. And so that set up the Georgian line. Now, the Stuarts gave up on Ireland, but once the Georgians came in, they were still trying to recapture the throne, and they went then to Scotland. So the son of King James II, who was defeated at the Bayern, King James III, James Edward Stuart, he arrived into Scotland and in 1715 and tried to set up a rebellion, was defeated. And then, of course, we had the famous rising of Bonnie Prince Charlie. He arrived, the 45ers, he arrived in 45, and he nearly did the job. His army got down as far as Derby, a little over 100 miles from London. Ultimately, he was defeated. But what is interesting was the Irish Catholics were so downtrodden, they didn't rise in support of the Stuarts. They'd had enough of the whole thing. And the only thing is, I know you know it, but there's a song, Mogillamar. I know it. Beautiful song, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you said something there. That's actually about Mogillamar is actually Bonnie Prince Charlie going back to France. That's what, my gallant lad. That is actually Then when he went back to France, he's gone back over to see. He's the gallant lad that's gone back there.
Isn't that very interesting indeed? The big house in Ireland, then the Anglo-Irish Estate House, was that beginning to emerge at this time?
It's beginning to emerge, absolutely. So what happens now is the ascendancy, the Protestants, they feel they've smashed the Catholics. So they feel, and the Jacobites, so they don't feel in danger anymore. So when they were in danger, they built the tower houses, they built the castles. Now they don't feel in danger. So they can build these great houses that have no defensive features at all, like Castletown, like Moorcross, like Bantry House, like the great Palladian mansion. The two of us went up there to see this falling down now at Kilcooley.
I know.
Yeah.
Incredible place.
Incredible, yeah. Beautiful.
Place, yeah.
These were there. And these
they were emulating the kind of houses in England, of course,
absolutely, because they could never do it up to now because they hadn't enough. It wasn't peaceful enough. But now Ireland was peaceful enough, and they start to do that and compete with each other. And you have Capability Brown coming in, doing up the gardens, and they all competed to have a lake and whatever in front of them. And then, as well as that, they also felt happy. So they began to do up Dublin as well as that. So what was happening then was you had an Irish Parliament, and the Protestant lords would be in the Parliament. Parliament met in the winter, so every winter there'd be a season and they'd come to Dublin. And then they had townhouses as well. So we had the great Georgian buildings. Now, a lot of those became tenements and fell apart, like in Mountjoy Square. But of course, they're still around in Merrion Square. They were originally for the MPs. If you were coming in from the country, from Kerry in those days, you were Lord Lansdowne, it might take you 3 or 4 days. You weren't going to go up and down too often. You stayed in Dublin. And then that was the winter season when all the balls and the parties and the whole lot was on. And then in 1657, Dublin was a very prosperous city, and you had the wide streets. So they began to build all these great wide streets. So that's where you get. Well, it used to be called Saxwell Street. It's now O'Connell Street. But funnily enough, a lot of them still have English names. Westmoreland Street, D'Lear Street, all of those. They're the wide streets, which getting rid of the old medieval Dublin. And if you think about it then, the St. Patrick's Day Parade, I daren't call it Paddy's Day, St. Patrick's Day Parade, that's facilitated. It comes down the great wide boulevards that were created then.
Isn't it interesting? And in parallel to this, then, we had the Enlightenment.
Yes.
Which was... Would you just explain what exactly that was?
Yeah, well, in the 18th century, a lot of technology moved forward in the 19th century. Technology didn't move forward, but ideas moved forward.
Yeah.
And a whole lot of people, and like they were thinking, what you would call is they were thinking for themselves. Up to that, you got, it was top-down stuff. The church told you what to think, or the king told you what to think. These people felt that they should be able to think for themselves. So there was loads of them around. But one fellow was John Locke, and he believed like that. In other words, government shouldn't be kings. Get rid of those. It should be government by the people, with the consent of the people. Government of the people, for the people. So he was one of the first ones. So all these ideas, we take them for granted. But these are the ideas that underlie all our constitutions today. They probably have had more influence on than anybody else. Then you had Voltaire, and he believed in a fair trial, freedom of speech, that all other rights depended on being able to criticise the government. So freedom of speech as well as that, and freedom of religious practice. Then you had Rousseau, and he believed an interesting thing. This is the idea of a social contract. So, in other words, we give up a lot of our freedoms voluntarily when we become part of the state, but the state then has a duty to look after us. So you can look at that now, but see, that's all right in theory, but the devil is in the detail. So you think at the moment then, you are a duty to look after the people. Now, what do? Left-wing parties would say you should put the price, you should subsidise diesel back down to the level it was in before the crisis. The government, more right-wing parties are saying we should compromise, we should take some of the pain. So to what extent does the government intervene? That's a big thing. And then you've Montesquieu. Another thing we take completely for granted is the separation of powers.
Yes.
So you have the legislature that makes the rules, you have the executive that puts them into practice, and the courts that oversee them. And he saw a tension between all of those. So in the modern world, most of our listeners won't, but the older listeners will remember the thundering disgrace.
I do
when
indeed.
Paddy Donegan.
Carroll O'Donnell.
Yeah, Carroll O'Donnell, whether he was right or not, he went out there. His belief was that this was an infringement of the separation of powers, the right of the courts to oversee legislation. And, and there was, terrible roly-boly and all that about
Well, he was a man of great principle with what he did.
Well, he was. And, it was. And you might have said, maybe Paddy Donegan had a glass or two of the refreshments before he did that. Maybe it was, but at the same time, without that. So again, we take that for granted. That's the way we do things in society. And now you've tension in America, separation of powers again. But you can see that Trump is trying to push it. push it in terms of the courts and in terms of the executive. In other words, forcing them to do things. So, that's the way. But we've got all this then.
I presume there was a huge fight back against this notion of enlightenment from the church, I would imagine, particularly.
The church absolutely hated it because it was a top-down and of course they did. And the Enlightenment led on then to revolutions, and that, you know, the church certainly didn't like that when it came to the French Revolution, because they came and said very much, now maybe it's not a good idea, but the government should control all the religion in the country and that. So they certainly didn't. There was a huge pushback against that. And of course, you were taking your life in your hands. They have given us this freedom of speech, but in doing it, they took their own lives in their hands. Yeah. We don't take our lives in our hands now. But, I'm fascinated by the Enlightenment, and nearly every Western government has got its basic laws, the basic beliefs come from the Enlightenment. And the America then was set up, American War of Independence. So I'll just tell you, for example, the American War of Independence then came along. There was the Boston Tea Party, and there was a brew, what they call the Boston brew. They threw all the tea because it was being taxed. So they believed then it should be government of the people for the people. But Britain was taxing them, but they had no representation in the House of Commons. So this tea arrived in. There was all going to be taxed, and they threw it into the harbour. It led to the American War of Independence and the Declaration of Independence. But I think it's worth just for 1 second if I look at the Declaration of Independence, because this is, and it's known by so many people, but it underlies everything we take for granted. And they say, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just power from the consent of the government.
Shades of the proclamation there.
Yeah, well, of course it is, because what happens is nearly everything, our own constitution, they all look back at the American Declaration of Independence, and they shake it around a little bit or whatever, but it is the template for all our modern government. And then, of course, the Americans won their freedom, and that set a model then for evolution in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say we think we're living in strange times. We are, I suppose, but the 17th and 18th century, they were incredible times.
They were absolutely incredible. It was, the old system, and the way that the people I think were fantastic in the Enlightenment, because they had to think outside the box. If you were a fish that's down 5,000 feet in the ocean, you have no idea that there are other things where there isn't. People don't live in water. And it was the same thing as that. They had to think outside the box. So the American Revolution went extremely well, and it got support from France as well. That's a funny one, because in the end, King Louis, it was to bring him down. But Louis XVI was actually a reformer. And we'll often find that when you come up to a revolution, it is often actually happens at a time of reform. And he was trying to reform, but he supported the American Revolution, and it was successful. But then, in doing that, the state went bust. He had the kings of France hadn't called in the Parliament, the Estates General, for nearly 200 years. But now they were bust. They had to call him in, and when they called him in, the boys said, "We're here now. We are not going until we get a constitution." And that was the first then stirrings of the French Revolution.
Incredible. And am I going too far by talking about the 1798 Rising then? Because...
Yeah, no, you're not really. Funnily enough, there was, at the end then, this is interesting, often the 1798 Rising is given as something that the Catholics were terribly trodden down. Coming up to the 1978 Rising, the Catholics the penal laws were largely abolished in the way up to that. They were allowed to vote if they had a certain amount of property. They weren't allowed to sit. The basic things they weren't allowed to do was sit in Parliament or have high government office. So, for example, Daniel O'Connell was allowed, as a Catholic, practice as a barrister at that stage, but he couldn't go to the inner bar. He never became a Queen's Counsel. They were relatively small things on the way, but there was reform. But then what happened? And Maynooth, 1795, Maynooth, the National Cemetery, is funded by the British government. Why did they do that? Because they didn't. They thought the priests going to revolutionary France, the revolution was going ahead in France, were coming back with revolutionary ideas. Better to keep him at home. And so they said to the Catholic Church, you now, give us a bit of support and we'll it's Maynooth. But
it's interesting. But it was the ideas from France and from America that fueled.
Oh, absolutely,
yeah.
Because it was interesting. That was and I think, it's often seen as, that there was discrimination against Catholic and dissenters. There really wasn't. It was really, I see it anyway, very much as a vision. This idea of a nirvana out there. And America, of course, was a very good model of how it had worked. It had worked there'd been a war, but it had worked relatively well. And then when the United Irishmen were founded, at that stage, the French Revolution was in its benign state.
Right.
So it's a constitutional monarch.
We're out of time. It's just about, it was suppressed, of course. And did it lead to sort of a bad deal then for Irish Catholics? Once again, did it? Suppression? No.
Well, look, we'll probably deal with that the next day.
Yeah.
But what it did, I suppose, really, because what you got then was the Act of Union.
Yes. All right. And we will get to that next time around. John, pleasure as always. Most interesting. That's it from me. Leanne produced. Stephen has the time tunnel on the lunchtime show, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Look after yourselves in the meantime. Bye-bye.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.